His wife is a civic muralist and portrait artist. So Simon, before you start your presentation, I'd like to know what on earth is a civic muralist?
Well, thank you very much, Denise. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Let me see if I can show you what a civic muralist is, if I can get this to work. That is a civic mural. That is a 2,800 square foot mural that depicts the civil rights movement in Durham. Think of it as graffiti on steroids. And that is a civic muralist. So there you have it. I'm conscious that we have very little time together, so I'll dive straight in. But we are in the midst of a major set of conversations in this industry, and we've been having them for some time now. And I'm not going to go over all these conversations, but it seems to me that they have come to revolve around three existential questions. What do we do, how do we do it, and who are we? And I suspect that researchers have been having the who are we conversation for a long time, but essentially what this is forcing us to do is re-look at the models that we apply in our profession and our business. The skills model, what we're using to bring impact to corporations. The business model, if you're on the supply side, what does it actually look like? The human model, and that's where I really want to concentrate today. The human model in terms of, as Kathy was talking about it, the Generation 1.5, or indeed the Millennial Generation as it's generally known. What is that going to mean for us in the research industry, and how is it going to converge with where the research industry is going, or how is it going to diverge, and what do we do about that? Today, we have data sources coming to us from everywhere. We are expected as researchers to be multitaskers, multi-specialists. We are expected to be comfortable with everything from crowdsourcing to digital qualitative to big data to social media. You name it, we're supposed to be able to utilize these and bring them together and synthesize them. As we're doing so, clients are telling us that the way in which they're working and they're bringing in insights to their C-suites are beginning to change radically. And this is from the latest Future of Research study, saying in the future, in the near future, in the next 5 years, they're going to be doing much more data mining, analytics, we know that, much more integration of multiple data streams, much more in the way of customer experience as opposed to customer satisfaction, much more path to purchase, digital qual, things like that. The stuff that we've all been used to in the past, advertising testing, copy testing, advertising tracking, brand tracking, all of that sort of stuff, they're saying we're going to move to doing much less of. So the budget has moved from validation to the front end, and that is beginning to take its toll on the way in which we do research. Investors agree. Investment is pouring into this industry at an enormous rate, and where is it going? It's going into big data analytics. When we started measuring investment back in 2011, 800 million came into this industry. Last year it was 5.8 billion, and most of that went into big data analytics. Does that mean that we're going to be, all of us data scientists? Not necessarily, but obviously the world is shifting. As is the market research ecosystem. I don't need to tell you that the cozy old days of where a client had a problem, called up their full-service market research company, who might then have gone out to a sample provider to provide sample, but then provided the whole service internally and fed it back up to the client. Those cozy days are over. Today, it's difficult to tell who is providing what to whom, and in fact, we're all competing, we're all providing services to each other whilst at the same time being competitive. So sample providers, offshore outsourcers, DIY app stores, they're all competing for the same space, which again brings to mind the question, who are we and how do we actually go about our business? Our business models are mutating. We're going from data collection to data curation. We're going to focused expertise. We're going to partnerships and collaboration that are based on outsourced relationships. This is much more of a modular industry than it ever was before. It's not a vertically integrated industry anymore by any stretch of the imagination. And we're going from project mentality to continuous learning mentality. So the whole model of what we do is changing. And when we talk to clients particularly, but also to suppliers about, okay, so what does that mean for the skill set of the future, of the next 5 years, the very near future, what they tell us is the stuff that is really going to be prized are the softer or power skills, such as storytelling, working in an unstructured environment, creativity, going back to what Kathy was talking about, influencing skills, being able to influence, synthesis. What we won't be doing as much is project management and PowerPoint skills. Thank God, PowerPoint may die. But then I'll have to learn Prezi. I don't think I can do that. But you can see the shift of skills that are expected in the way in which we do our work. And really what this means is that, yes, our research skills, which we've built and honed for decades, they are going to remain incredibly important, particularly as we deal with vast sets of data. But our impact and the way in which we go about translating those research skills into business decisions is going to rely very, very, very heavily on our ability to synthesize, our ability to tell the story, our ability to consult, and above all, our ability to influence. So I'm not going to go into this, but this is something that Kim Dedeker and Jim Burling put up about a year ago at Michigan State when we had a conference on educating the researcher of the future. And what they're basically saying is, in addition to the skills that we all have, consumer research skills, now we're going to have to incorporate customer relationship management, big data, management consulting, predictive analytics, social media analytics, and within management consulting, all of those soft skills that I showed you earlier. So this begs the question. Already in our industry, about 20% of management is from the Millennial Generation. 5 years from now, certainly by the end of this decade, we can expect that to be around 50%. 10 years from now, probably about 70%. We are moving, we are transitioning. And indeed, between my generation and the Millennial Generation, there is another half generation that is kind of in charge of now kind of the transition between the boomers and the millennials themselves. So what is this going to mean for the way in which we do research and the way in which research actually functions? The Millennial Generation is probably one of the most maligned for a long, long time. I'm now hearing much more maligning of the boomers, by the way, than I had before, as we realize how failuristic we've been. But this infamous front cover from Time of the me generation, me, this idea that it's all about this narcissistic generation that really needs constant reassurance. But when you delve down into this generation, actually you find something that's rather different. You find it actually to be much more of a we generation, much more of a social generation than perhaps previous ones were. And yes, they have different ideas of what social may mean, but they are, in fact, probably more philanthropic, more outgoing, more, world conscious than many would have you believe. Millennials are great at multitasking. Anybody who has had children in the last 20 years, 30 years knows that. They're great at being connected in different ways at different times. You can go into a teenager's room and they've got 3 screens going at the same time, and you ask them, how on earth can you concentrate? And they say, well, I couldn't concentrate unless I had 3 screens going at the same time. And I literally had my daughter tell me that once. They are very environmentally aware, very environmentally conscious. They're obviously very socially connected, But what is really interesting is that they operate really well in teams. This is not so much of an I generation, you know, that old saying, there's no such thing as I in team. This is not a generation that believes in individual leadership, but much more team leadership. And in that respect, for them, mentoring is actually incredibly important. So when you have an ADHD guy, you know, in your team who's constantly seeking reassurance, is actually less, you know, the fact that they're ADHD, less that they're insecure. It's more that they're looking for constant mentoring and constant upgrading. And this has these sets of traits pose a number of challenges for boomer or post-boomer employers today. So, for example, you know, in organizations today which rely upon command and control management, where individuals, you know, work in cubes, where the flow of information is very heavily managed, where, you know, job security is what it's all about, and where influence is through your position in the organization. Where millennials are concerned, we're looking at a need for very active, involved leadership, not command and control, not the CEO sitting in an office on the 25th floor, but involved with sleeves up, very collaborative, highly teamwork oriented, and very much about an unstructured flow of information. The idea of a managed flow of information is really anathema. Work is not so much about income and security as it is about personal enrichment as well as income. And they influence each other through networks, through communities. They're very outward looking, they're constantly looking to learn, but in a very unstructured way. And, you know, again, I'll come back to my own experience. I have a 30-year-old daughter in the industry, and every time she's been in a job a year, she's on the phone to me going, I can't stand this place. They're so structured, they don't know what they're doing, they can't manage, you know, I don't get enough leadership opportunity. Well, that's, again, it sounds narcissistic, and I thought it was for a long time, but it actually is an expression of the need to be involved and the need to have new experiences all the time. So, as far back as 2008, Lynch actually posited this, that the millennial market research workplace will actually be one that is very highly networked, with, you know, networking teams and people constantly in touch with each other, usually by social media, very heavily team-based, where teams will be fluid things that change all the time, highly knowledge-intensive, i.e., building on knowledge that we have already collected rather than recollecting it all the time. And to use Dan Ariely's words, predictably unpredictable. But in an age of integrated insights, this may not be a bad thing. This may be the environment of the future that will actually work for the types of insights and the types of work that we want to be able to do. And the question, I think, that when Reg Baker and I were doing the original work on this last year, that we asked each other was, you know, do we attract millennials to such a workplace, i.e. do we build it for them? Because, you know, the question is, how do we get people in if they're like this and we're running a command and control structured, you know, information company? How do we change our companies to attract them? Or are they going to construct it for us? Is it just going to be a natural mutation, if you like, as more and more millennials become, you know, come into managerial roles? And I think the answer really is that there is an immense amount of congruence between what I was showing you earlier about what research looks like and is going to look like in the next 5 years, that very fast-paced, multi-sourced, integrated data, synthesis type of workplace, and the skills that millennials bring and the way in which they work. They're highly entrepreneurial. We're going to need entrepreneurial thinking. They're into synthesis. They can synthesize. They can synthesize 3, 4, 5 screens at a time. They're innovative. They like collaborating horizontally. And in a world in which insights will come from horizontal collaboration between different sets of people and different sets of data, this is going to be really important. They have cross-cultural skills. This is the most cross-cultural generation we have ever seen. 70% of millennials are so-called minority. So they are going to be able to understand markets as they progress. And their emphasis on teamwork may be exactly what we're looking for. I think where the jury may be out is, are they going to be able to lead? We don't know yet, because they haven't really had the chance. And are they capable of focused critical thinking and problem solving rather than sort of more scattered thinking and problem solving? And I guess we don't know yet. What I think we do know, though, is, yes, out in the general world that we inhabit, or many of us inhabit, 20% of millennials are already in management positions. However, at this conference, if you look around you, it's probably about 50%. And that's because over the last 3 years, there have been some 400 companies founded in this space alone that have taken venture capital. This doesn't account for those that haven't taken venture capital. There are about 400 new competitors. Probably, I don't know how many of them are here at this conference, but they're all led by millennials. The time has come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. That was great and made us think at the end of the second day, or towards the end of the day, what's going to happen to our industry going forward. We have time for just one question. Obviously, everybody agrees with you, Simon.
Either that or they're desperate to get out.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you.